I'm going to give my bit on all things Air. This will be the first video of a series on technologies that I really wanted to cover anyway, such as differences within throughput, whether it's Wi-Fi, Ethernet, USB to Firewire, so on and so forth, and SSD, what is sequential, what is random writes and reads, so on and so forth. But for this first video, at least, I wanted to give a little bit of history and establish some definitions. I have received some comments and watched videos on consumers wanting computers that would fit in your pocket. Now, at least from my days of doing more technical side on computers than programming, there was a difference and an actual consumer class difference between what is a pocket PC and an ultra portable. So I don't think those two markets could be considered to compete. I mean, obviously somebody's going to want a pocket PC, is going to want a pocket PC, and an ultra portable. So I'll leave it at that. But getting back to the history, Apple, and this was one at least product which I'm going to show a picture here, is the PowerBook 100. The PowerBook 100 was one of Apple's first ultra compact notebooks or laptops, whatever you want to call it, and at the time was fairly expensive. And I'm going to show you another picture, and this one was around 1998, and this is the PowerBook 2400, and this was also on the pricey side for its time. Now, the common thread between these two is that they didn't do very well, and one can make several arguments. We could certainly go back and see what the consumer market was at the time, its competition, so on and so forth, but for a primary, generally speaking, both were considered phased out of the market due to their price, and that they couldn't quite meet what consumers were willing to spend at the time for that kind of product. So another product I also wanted to go on to is not an ultra portable, but another product that Apple had produced, which was the Cube. This is another product that didn't do very well in the market, but was heavily hyped up. And with all this debate on whether the MacBook Air will do well or not, look, if the MacBook Air does well, that's great. If it doesn't, it won't be the first and last time. I really wanted to reserve my judgment on will the MacBook Air do well after its first, at least giving it a good quarter of numbers. But I've been reading a tremendous amount of articles on reseller numbers, and they're not that impressed with the numbers that are coming out there, and I think a lot of it has to do with things that I'm hearing about limited supply and so on and so forth. One could also argue that the market right now is not as hot for computer sales, but I think that we give it a good 3 months, and we'll see the numbers. I mean, it is not going to appeal to as broad of a market as a MacBook. So some of the analysts that are comparing it to a MacBook sale numbers, I guess one could make an argument for it, and one could make an argument against it. At least in my opinion, it's not as broad a market, and of course that comes from my other videos in criticizing some of its limitations for the price. And a lot of people are going to say, is a technology, so to speak, that we can take SSD, going to be worth the cost for what I want to use it for? And that has to be translated into the cost of doing business to promote the product, and how many will be able to meet that criteria, of course. Now, one thing that I wanted to say that was good about the Air as far as the market is concerned, and I know a couple of my subscribers will appreciate it. Emican is one that I can think of off the top, because he continually touts this, is that at least the form factor of the chip that Intel was able to produce for the MacBook Air was a marvel of technology. I'm not one, at least in my personal opinion, to go, hey, we can get the thinnest, but it certainly has set another standard, because Lenovo and Fujitsu are now going after Intel to get similar chips. Now, they're not going to be exactly the same as the Intel chip in the MacBook Air, and from what I've gathered, they're going to be slightly slower. I think it's 1.2 gigahertz. But that is an Apple first on getting that form factor chip that other companies will be taking similar technology from. So there's kudos for Apple, at least on pushing the technology envelope. And that's something that people can consider. Products go through phases, and like I said in my other vids, I wouldn't be surprised in later generations of the MacBook Air that it's something definitely more appealing. I mean, you learn from things, and you put what you can out there, and you have to push the technology, and that technology costs a considerable amount, and you have to get some sort of return on that, whether it's what you hope or not, but at least it's better than zero, so to speak, and it definitely lays the foundation and form factors for future products. Anyway, so I will continue the next vids more on technology than just general opinions. Thanks for watching.